Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wa usalli wa usallim ala Sayyid al-awwaleen wal akhirin. Nabiyyina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa barak wa sallam. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. So for the next two periods, we're going to be looking at Ramadan and to try to explain what it is and to answer some of your questions. And the intention is to do it in a basic way that could be understood, by people who have recently embraced Islam or people who are reviving, their faith. And because we're not totally, there's another program downstairs, we'll be reviewing some of the issues that we're looking at next week also for those who missed it. Now, we remember in the beginning of our session, we looked at the writings of a famous North African Maliki scholar, Sidi Abdurrahman al-Akhdari. And he had a section within his book that he called What is Required of a New Muslim. And it was a brilliant approach. And from his approach, we remember that what he said in the beginning is that a person who is embracing Islam should, number one, correct and authenticate his or her faith. That's the first thing. And as we said, this presupposes that the person has a faith or they have a way of life. So it's not to negate what you have before, but it is to correct it and authenticate it. And then he said, seek knowledge of the personal obligations. So a person who's accepting Islam, first, your concept of your faith, get it straight, and then try to become as familiar as possible with fara'id. And fara'id are the obligations, things that we are obliged to do. There's certain things that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has commanded us to do. We need to know what these things are before any of the other details. People tend to go into the details without learning what's actually fard, or what is really obligatory. So they might learn, how to tie their scarf, or what type of cap to wear, or, how to pick out halal food. And there's certain things that are important, but they're not necessarily the foundations. Okay, so from amongst these would be the 5 pillars of Islam. And then Sidi Abdurrahman said that you should try to stay within the limits commanded by Allah. So what we want to show are the basic limits and to give you a general understanding of the fasting itself. Some of my slides, because this is coming off of an iPad, some of them are not actually showing in this particular format. But the foundations of Islam we understood. This is the 5 pillars of Islam, and that is the Shahada, the testimony of oneness of God and prophethood of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and then is establishing prayers, establishing almsgiving, right, fasting in Ramadan, and making Hajj, the pilgrimage. Okay, so these are our foundations. And in terms of fasting in Ramadan, this is something that comes along really once per year, 1 month during the year. There's fasting that we can do all year. But this particular fast, the one that is obligatory on Muslims, it actually comes in the month of Ramadan, which on the lunar calendar is the 9th month. And the lunar calendar rotates. Okay, so the issue of fasting, it is called Som or Siyam, right? And Siyam, that word in Arabic, the literal meaning of Siyam means withdrawal, stagnancy, and motionlessness. And it's interesting to learn the roots of words, because the root of the word that we do as an action has an impact on it. For instance, when you say zakat, people will know that as the almsgiving 2.5% of your wealth is given to the poor and the needy. So people will say, okay, that's like charity. But no, the word zakat means purity. That's what the word is. And that impacts what it is, because it's not just being kind to the poor. It's purifying your wealth. That's the essence of what zakat is. Okay, so siyam itself, the Arabs used to use this word when they talked about the still wind, when the wind is like still, or when the water is still. Okay, so they would use that term. Also, horses that refuse to eat, they would describe it with this term. Okay, so the horse is like abstaining for whatever the reason is. And also human beings who were abstaining from food and drink and also from talking. So siyam is used, and we learned that some of the great, prophets and people within Islamic history, Maryam, the mother of Isa, may Allah be pleased with her, had to do a type of a fast. Zechariah had to do a fast without speaking to anybody. Okay, so that's a fast too. There's a fast where you abstain from talk, or you abstain from interaction. So these are all forms of the concept of siyam. Okay, in this case, as a legal technical term, because this is how it's described in Islamic jurisprudence. Okay, so as a technical term, Sawm, it means abstention from food, drink, and sexual gratification from dawn to dusk, meaning sunset, with the intention of worship. So all of these things. So this is a special form of fasting. People fast for many different reasons. Now there's a new craze, the intermittent fasting. And a lot of people say, I want to be intermittent fastings, right? And it's usually health reasons. Okay, it's a fast. You also have people who fast for political reasons. It's like a hunger strike. So fasting can be done for a number of reasons. Okay, and but Sawm here, the technical term, is this is how it's described. And the Prophet ﷺ observed fasting in what is called the Meccan period. And the first 13 years of his life when he was in Mecca, so that's called the Meccan period. And then he traveled to Medina, and that's the Medina period. Okay, so the first 13 years, Mecca, the last 10 years was Medina. Okay, and in the Meccan period, they did observe fast, but it was just random fasts. Then even on Mondays and Thursdays, but there was nothing that was obligatory. So when you became a Muslim in Mecca in the early phase of Islam, you didn't have to fast. That was not part of being a Muslim. Main thing was to believe in one God and to accept the Prophet Muhammad, and to be a good person and to start to pray whenever you could, because this is the first phase of Islam. And so it had a lot to do with people's intentions, and they suffered because they were under attack. Okay, but as it's stated here, fasting was made obligatory after the Prophet migrated from Mecca to Medina. Okay, so in the second year after the migration, that's when fasting became obligatory. And this is after Salat. Salat was not obligatory in Mecca either, but it became obligatory in Medina. And Zakat, giving of Zakat, also became obligatory in Medina. Okay? So this is how, it's like the evolution of fasting where it is. And as I said, fasting is done for many different reasons: health reasons, physical reasons, political reasons. There's a lot of different ideas concerning fasting. Buddhists fast, some Christians fast. Some of the Christians say they fast on certain days, certain Fridays, like in Easter or whatever. They don't eat meat. So there's different, but this fasting, what is the reason why we fast? Okay, and this is where in the second chapter, verse 183, Allah tells us, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu, kutiba alaykum as-siyam, kama kutiba ala alladhina min qablikum la'allakum tattaqun. So, O you who believe, fasting has been prescribed on you as it was prescribed on those before you in order that you would gain or nurture taqwa, the consciousness of Allah. So the essence of the reason why we are fasting is for the consciousness of God. It's not to lose weight. It's not to enjoy the meals, although some people enjoy iftar more than any other meals during the year. They build the whole Ramadan around iftar. Okay, that's not the essence of why we're fasting. And when you understand this point, it makes the fast different. Because otherwise it becomes like a battle between, thirst and hunger. Right? But when we know it's something else, then the mind and the soul has a way of controlling the body. Okay, so we can take it to a higher stage. All right? And in terms of the reasons why we're fasting as well, we had looked at this tradition before, I believe, in this class. But again, this makes it very clear where the Prophet said, Al-Kayyis man dana nafsa wa amila lima ba'd al-maut, that the intelligent person is the one who controls himself and works toward life after death. Wal-ahmaq man atba'a nafsahu hawaha wa tamanna ala Allahi al-amani. And the fool is the one who makes himself follow his own desires and then puts all his hopes in Allah. That is a fool. So fasting in itself, as you can see, al-kayyis man dana nafsa. He controls himself. So what it also develops is patience, self-control, and also empathy. And when they say empathy, you have sympathy in English, and you have empathy. So if you are sympathetic to somebody, like you feel sorry for them, you see people in a starvation situation, in a famine, and we say we're sympathetic. But many people they're sympathetic, but empathy means you identify with the people. Now, how in Canada, with as much food as we have, where we have to literally decide what kind of food we're going to eat, and some people are counting calories. How can you empathize with somebody who's starving to death? It's very difficult because you can't feel it, right? You can't feel it. Ramadan can give you that feeling. Because no matter what, during that day, you're not going to eat and you're not going to drink. And it's for 29 to 30 days. So that's serious. So now you can start to begin to feel how people are when they're in a famine situation and they cannot eat. Right now in Gaza and Palestine and places like this, like if they're lucky, they get one meal a day. Right? And it's only something very simple. Right? So now how can we even relate to this? Fasting can give this. And that's important when we are an ummah, we are a nation. Everybody's not going to be the same. There are going to be some who have blessings or who have more abundance. That's reality of life. And the other people don't have it. Some people live in tropical areas. And in tropical areas, it's raining. You go to Malaysia and countries like this, it's always like 30 degrees most of the year, maybe 29. Like 25 is like freezing for them. Okay? And it usually has a light rain. Then you have rainy season, but it's like sun, rain, sun, rain. Okay, this is how it is. If you're in the Caribbean, I lived in the Caribbean for a while, and in Jamaica during much of the year, especially the rainy season. It would rain when 12 o'clock comes. Then you get a downpour, and then by Asa, the sun is out. Okay, so that's the perfect climate for growing food. So therefore, there's no way you're going to be actually starving because something's growing that you can even boil or cook or something. But if you live in a desert where there's nothing out there, that's a different situation. So how can a person in a tropical rainforest relate to the person with no water or no food? This is what fasting can give. Okay? These are some of the concepts behind it. And in terms of its revelation, and I'm going to go over this because I think most of the people here have an idea about Ramadan tonight. And, we can go over some of the other aspects of it. And next week we can, for the people who will be online, review and then go further. So the Quran is saying that it was the month of Ramadan in which the Quran was first bestowed on high, right? It was revealed as a guidance to humanity and self-evident proof of that guidance, right? And as a standard by which to separate truth from falsehood. So, and then Allah says in this verse, so whoever of you lives in to see this month shall fast. So whoever is alive, right? And what is the conditions is the person needs to be mature and sane, right? And not, of bad health. If you have, these qualities, you must fast. If you're a Muslim, you must fast. Okay? Now, one of the things that may come up, especially for the new Muslims, and this is an exemption. We're going to go over some of the normal exemptions. But one key point is that you remember in the Meccan period, people were Muslim and some died. And they did not fast. But they were highest level of Islam. So fasting evolved. Okay, it went stage by stage. Similarly, when a person embraces Islam, they are not obliged to do everything immediately. And it's a mistake to tell somebody who just took Shahada that they have to fast every single day. We encourage them to. But they are allowed to gradually understand Islam and come into it until they're on their feet as a Muslim, and then they can fast. Right? So, and that's how Islam came in the beginning. Came in stages. Didn't come all at once. And this is important for us to understand. Our faith goes up and down. It's not always the same. Okay? Now, in terms of exemption from fasting, there is a person who is sick. The Quran tells us that if a person is sick, under real hardship, or a traveler outside his home area, an elderly person who are unable to fast, pregnant and breastfeeding women, and women who are menstruating or in childbirth, right, after the conception, exempted from fast. Now, I want to open up the floor for any questions you may have about these areas, because these are some areas that actually have questions. Yeah.
For a traveler outside his home area,
Yeah.
say I was camping in Kingston, would that count?
Yeah, so this is a good question because the Quran is saying, وَمَنْ كَانَ مِنْكُمْ مَرِيضًا أَوْ عَلَى السَّفَرِ. So the person is traveling. So traveling means that you go outside of your township, right, and you're on the road. You can go camping in your backyard. We do it with our kids. You put up a tent in the backyard, right? And they camp, and there's raccoons and things around, so they can get some feeling, of being outside, right? But they're not way outside. So if you're outside of Toronto, like on a journey, like you've left the city, then technically speaking, you could break your fast. Okay? More than likely you wouldn't if it was that close, but technically speaking, you can. And some people ask the question about traveling because, and this is a point that even scholars differed on, because some of the scholars said that hardship means mashaqqa, it means difficulty. So you must be traveling, because when they traveled in those days, it was difficult. When you left your township, you're in the desert. So there's some difficulty that you're going. But now, can you say if a person has a meeting in Ottawa, so they drive to the airport, get on Air Canada, fly nicely for an hour or so to Ottawa, get out, go into their hotel, and have a meeting, then somebody would say that's not traveling. That's where's the mashaqqa, right? This is an argument. But the point is that still that person is traveling, because even although it's different, you're in a different place. Sometimes it's different times. Sometimes the temperature is different. Whatever it is, but you've traveled out, so therefore it is permissible to break your fast. And nobody can say to you, you can't break your fast. If you want to fast, then okay. That was a question? So, and there's even a case where the one person said, I'm fasting, and they were traveling. And the Prophet ﷺ, then they drank. He had everybody drink, and he said, there's no blessings, extra blessings, in fasting while you're traveling. He put it to them, because they thought that they were like super Muslims. No, there's no extra blessings in doing this, right? You can do it. It wouldn't be wrong, but don't think that you're going to get double the blessing because you're doing this. No.
So I think there's a difference between some of these points around accept versus cannot fast, right? If I look at that last bullet.
Yeah. Okay, this now, we're going stage by stage, right?
So the last point there, you cannot fast.
Yeah.
So women who are menstruating, it's not that they can fast if they want to.
Right.
So those that last point is they cannot fast versus the first four. I think they're allowed to if they want to. Correct.
Right. So you got to go stage by stage, though, right? Because they're not exactly the same, but they're very similar. Yeah.
For traveling, then should you avoid travel that's within your control during the month? So that
Yeah, I mean, this is a good question, because some weak-minded Muslims, and I'm not going to say which country it is, but it's rich people, right? They would schedule their vacation in Ramadan. So they fly from the Muslim world to Paris, or Switzerland, gay Paris, right? Gay too, and they're in Paris during Ramadan, right? And technically speaking, they're traveling, right? They're traveling. Oh, so is it my thing? Huh? Yeah. So technically speaking, they're traveling. That's wrong. I mean, you can't, technically speaking, say to that person that they've committed haram, that they've done something, because they are traveling. But they are blessing. Allah knows what's in your heart. So they're trying to trick Allah by doing this. So that's not right. But, to travel in Ramadan, there's nothing wrong with traveling in Ramadan. And for some people, it's nice to travel in Ramadan because you get to go somewhere else and you be with other Muslims who are fasting and, whatever. It's nice to travel, especially if you could travel, into a Muslim country where they're not blowing it up. You really enjoy Muslims in Ramadan, especially a Muslim town or village. It's an experience everybody should have. Yeah. Questions somebody have? So this is the first point. Okay. Well, this is the traveler. The other point which comes up is the sick person, marid. So what does marid mean in this case? Some people think, well, I'm queasy and I got a little headache. No. When you fast, if you're really not used to fasting, especially in the first week or so, you're going to feel tired, queasy. You might feel a little bit sick. That's not what this means. You're sick. You're like really vomiting on your back, high fever. It means that you're incapacitated with sickness. Then you can break your fast, and you make it up after the month. So you count the days. If you were sick, people had COVID, or you have a flu, so 7 days you had it. So you mark the days, and then after Ramadan, at any point during the year, sooner the better, then you can make up the 7 days. All right, so that's the sick person. The next category is the elderly person who's unable to fast. Okay, because there are elderly people who can fast, but when the person's body does not allow them to fast, then they can break the fast. And what they would do, they would feed a poor person for every day. So you're allowed to pay a fidya, which is feeding a poor person. We'll make it whatever it is going to be, $10 or whatever. So you would say if it's $10 for the fidya, then $300 you give to feed poor people, and then you don't have to fast. Okay, so that's the elderly people. Also, pregnant woman and breastfeeding. Now this one gets a little bit the slight nuances in this, because the pregnant woman is clear, because now she will become, she's like sick because her body can't take it, and that's okay. But now in terms of breastfeeding, the scholars are looking now, is the woman, is she going to break her fast because she feels sick, or because the fast is diluting her milk, so she's afraid for the baby, but she's okay. But she breaks it because her milk is not strong enough for the child, so she does it. If she's breaking it for the child, if she's breaking it for, because she's sick, make it up one day. But if you're doing it for the child, most of the scholars are saying fast the day over and also feed a poor person for every day, if she's doing it for that reason. Okay, so it's a slight nuance here amongst the majority of scholars for that case. And a woman whose menstruation comes also should break the fast, and that means even if it is, unfortunately, 5 minutes before iftar, and she sees red. At that point, she's got to break it. It's not complete. She's got to make it up over again. Okay, and then the nifas after the childbirth, for the period also, they have nifas. Okay, so these are some of the main categories of exemption. Question?
If let's say I'm traveling and I break the fast halfway through the day because I can't take it. Actually, no, not for this situation. Let's say I accidentally eat food halfway through the day and I broke my fast. Should I continue on as if I was fasting and then make it up later, or should I just go on about my day as if I wasn't fasting at all?
Okay, this is a good question also that comes up, and that is that if you break your fast by mistake, right? So the Prophet ﷺ, said that if the person breaks their fast, by mistake, then you should, continue to fast, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave you that food or gave you that drink. And it happens, especially in the first week. Because if we're in a habit of eating and drinking at a certain time, especially drinking water, right? So you might by mistake drink water. Okay, as long as it's by mistake, then you're okay. You can't drink the water and then finish it. No, that would be wrong. There's even one case where the brother is eating and he's doing a whole meal. And when he's just about done, he said, "Oh Allah, I'm fasting." He's okay. As long as it was a mistake, it said the pen is lifted on 3. The pen writing on you, it's lifted on a sleeping person until they wake up. And it's lifted on a person who makes mistake, right? It's lifted on a person who's forced to do something. So there's some categories. The pen is not writing. So when you do it by forgetfulness or mistake, it's okay. Continue on now.
For the money for the elderly, is that given locally, or where should that money be given directly?
It is best to be given locally, because the sunnah was really to buy grains or dates or whatever it is, and you have poor people who are around, so you feed them. So that is the best thing to do. Today, however, we are connected internationally to different situations. And so therefore, you could give to, somebody who's in Gaza or, in parts of, Kashmir or wherever it is, where people need food, you could give toward that. But the scholars do say it's better to deal with people who are in need around you first. You got to deal with them first. Because it's kind of a contradiction. If there's people who are hungry there and then you're sending it 10,000 miles away. And surprisingly enough, and I recall in working at a social service center, and then we had some extra food. And so we went to this hostel that was housing women because we wanted to give away this extra food. And we came to the hostel and we said, "We've got some extra food here, some rice and meat and whatever." And they looked at us and they said, "Are you Muslims?" And we said, "Yes." And they said, "Oh, that's really good. Because half the women in this hostel are women, Muslims. And they don't want to eat regular food." So we thought we were just giving it to a food bank, not realizing that there were Muslim women in there who could not feed themselves. So right here in Toronto, there are Muslims who are actually in difficult situations. Okay, so we need to balance it as to how we actually do it. There's a question on this side as well.
Back to his question earlier, so if you break your fast accidentally and eat, that's not a day you have to make up again, right?
No, you don't have to make it up. You don't have to make it up. Okay. So these are the people who are exempted from fasting in Ramadan. It's a person who's sick, really sick, not just feeling a little headache or stomach ache. The traveler, when they're going outside on a journey outside their town, right? And this is an interesting one because there were certain scholars in Hanafi fiqh, they were like in India. There was one point where in India, and according to them, if you traveled 90 kilometers, then you're considered to be traveling. And some of them you had less than that. And those who read the books that are 100 years old, and you're living in certain big cities, you can travel that distance inside of your own town. You haven't left, your city, right? So it's not just based upon a number. It's your intention. Are you home or are you actually traveling? So if you're actually traveling, somebody might just go to Hamilton and just come back on the same day, right? So that's not really traveling. But if you went to Hamilton, which is outside of the GTA, and you intend to stay overnight in Hamilton, then that's traveling. So you could, technically speaking, break your fast. It is permissible to break the fast. Okay, so these are, some of the categories. Okay, yeah. And the other is the elderly people who cannot fast, and then pregnant and breastfeeding women also can break their fast and a woman who's on menstruation or in childbirth. Okay? Now, in terms of the pillars of fasting itself, and again, we have to look at Islamic fasting as different than intermittent fasting or different than hunger strike fasting. The pillars is, and this is just sort of a jurisprudence thing, your intention, you have to make intention to fast. And it doesn't have to be, you don't have to say it, although some scholars say it's better you say it every day. But your niyyah is in your heart. So you need to intend to be fasting. And then complete abstinence, you stay away from anything that will break the fast from the total duration. Okay, this is just sort of a jurisprudence point. Okay, now, what are some of the sunnahs of fasting? One is that when the fast is now coming to a close, you should hasten to break the fast. You do it as soon as iftar is in. And don't wait another hour or 2 hours thinking that you're a stronger Muslim. You're supposed to do it right away. And also in the morning, you will take a suhoor. You'll take a meal in the morning, right? We know before the dawn. And if you can, you break the fast with a date or water or both, right? And you make a dua at the time of iftar. Allahumma laka sumtu ala rizqika aftartu, for instance. I'm going to go back over all of this, again next week. Okay, so these are some of the sunnahs in terms of fasting itself. Any questions on any of this? So this is what distinguishes an Islamic fast from other forms of fasting. Now, undesirable actions. Here's where some questions might come. One of them is excessive gargling, like rinsing your mouth out and gargling, when you gargle down into your throat, okay, or cleansing your nostrils and everything with water, doing a lot. That is, you should try to stay away from this, especially the gargling. You can rinse your mouth, okay, but gargling down on your throat, try to stay away from this, because it's very possible your throat is thirsty, right? So it's going to open up. So try to avoid this. And also, because we're all, mature enough, kissing and hugging, if it causes desire, right, husband and wife, undesirable. Also, chewing gum. Like some people like to chew gum. That habit has gone down now amongst young people. Is it a habit for young people today to chew a lot of gum? I don't know why that stopped. Maybe because the dentist or something like that cost too much. But 20 years ago or so, everybody's chewing gum. Like chewing gum is part of being Canadian, right? And people chew for different reasons. In America, in certain places, they chew tobacco. And that's a habit that's also, especially baseball players and people in the South, they used to chew that. People from Yemen and Somalia and East Africa, they chew this leaf that they call qat or mira. They chew that. So anything we are chewing on something, it's got a taste to it, it's going to go down, right? No. Then you should, that's undesirable act.
What about smoking?
Yeah, so smoking also is undesirable thing to do. Because when you're smoking, you're going to see it goes into your lungs and down into the jof. So you shouldn't, smoking actually is makruh, it's hateful anyway, right? And the scholars have actually agreed, because even the Surgeon General in America, put out the fact that smoking causes cancer. But we cannot say, we're not saying it's haram, totally prohibited. Okay, but it's what they call makruh. It is undesirable thing, right? To be smoking. So especially in Ramadan, people should get away from this. And this is a chance in Ramadan to actually cut down smoking and maybe get out of the habit. But some people, unfortunately, they break their fasts and they light up. Before they even want the date, right? They want to smoke. Right. Why is that? Because the cigarette has got nicotine. It's a drug. So they're actually drug addicts. And the body is craving nicotine. So therefore, they would want that nicotine before the date. So this is a chance for people who smoke to come out of it. Also, it's undesirable. It's not wrong, but it's undesirable to taste food. You know, when you're cooking and you taste it to see, is it salt enough or not? And if you're a good cook, you can taste and spit it out, rinse your mouth, but it's undesirable. Because if you're a person like me, if I tasted it, I'm gonna eat it. I'm not trained. I can't. My body will eat that food. So it's undesirable to taste food, because if you do, you have to rinse your mouth until the taste is out of your mouth. So what that means is your husband or your wife has to bear with the curry or the biryani be a little bit salty, or it needs a little extra salt in your samosa. They have to live with it, right? Okay, because we can't be tasting the food. It's undesirable. And another undesirable act is cupping. And that is where people will put a cup on, bloodletting. It's a medical practice. Okay, where you put the cup on and then you drain the blood out of a certain area. The cupping is still done today. And it's a value to some people, to do the cupping, especially in the head. They have headaches and, whatever. But it's undesirable act to do in Ramadan. Should avoid doing. And of course, all of these things are really during the daylight hours. After Maghrib, when the sun sets, you go back to your normal life. So this is during the daylight hours in Ramadan. Okay? So, there's a lot of areas, but I just, took a couple. What breaks your fast? Any liquids or food. What is the idea? If it's going down into your jawf, this is the stomach area down, when things go inside the body. But it could go through the nose and go in. It could go through the eyes or other parts of your body, right? So anything that's going to go through one of your openings and reach inside, then this will break your fast. Also, vomiting and not throwing up or vomiting. Some people, especially in the beginning of the fast, they got really hungry and, whatever, they get dizzy and, they vomit. And that night, the iftar is like piled, with food. They ate too much. So they might end up during the next day vomiting. Now, if the person just vomits for natural reasons, it's okay. But I'm talking about self-induced vomiting. Now, what does that mean? As a strange thing, but in some cultures, the Romans used to do this because they loved eating food. So they would eat until they're filled, and then they would put their finger down and they would vomit it out, clean their mouth, and then take a next meal. You see? So some people do self-induced vomiting, right? It sounds strange, but you can't do that. Okay? Self-induced vomiting can help you sometimes, though, because you may have eaten some food that is actually spoiled food. It's no good, right? And you feel it inside of yourself, and you're getting sick. But some people have difficulty vomiting, right? So in that case, they put your finger down your throat, whatever, and make it come up. So, but if you do this self-induced vomiting, then breaks your fast. You can't do that. Okay? And the other area is deliberately inhaling tobacco, and that's where your smoking comes in, or drugs, right? So that's people who are taking drugs. Any of these things, that's also going to break the fast. All right? Yeah.
What if you have prescribed medicine throughout the day, especially if you have to take it with food or something before?
Yeah, so that if the person has prescribed medicine that they have to take during the day, and there's no way that they can function without it. Okay, then in that case, that person is considered sick. So they can break the fast, and then they just feed a poor person for every day because they medically can't fast. But what the doctors will do, and this happens with some people who are, say, diabetic or something certain disease, they say, in the morning, take your medicine in the morning, especially for diabetes, because when you're fasting, it lowers your blood sugar. So they say, take your medicine in the morning, fast, and then when iftar comes, then you can take medicine too when you eat. So with a doctor's prescription, you can possibly do this. Is he streaming things here? He is streaming. Okay, I thought the streaming was off.
No, it's not really a question.
Okay, are there any questions out there? Yeah.
This one's very specific, okay? If
Okay.
a person is quadriplegic and has tried fasting Ramadan and wound up in the hospital with problems 2 years in a row, are they exempt?
Okay, quadriplegic, in this case, define that, what that
Wound up
means?
in the hospital with problems with their kidney and bladder 2 years in a row. So quadriplegic means like fully
It's like paralyzed, right?
paralyzed, yeah.
Right. So in that case, if they're ending up in the hospital, then they're allowed to break the fast. They're marid. Because the fasting is not a punishment, right? We're not punishing our bodies in order to purify ourselves. That's not the idea of fasting, right? It's really more of your character than anything else. Why we're fasting is to come closer to Allah. It's not to punish our body. That's a Buddhist concept. That's not an Islamic concept. So if the person is sick, no problem. They break their fast, and for every day, they would feed a poor person. No problem at all.
Okay, so for a woman, if she does not know the exact time that the menstruation started, she only realizes after Maghrib, so after iftar. She doesn't know if, it was actually broken during the fast. Is that something she has to make up?
Well, I mean, if she didn't know, and then and she really doesn't know when it happened, then it's okay.
Maybe repeat the question. 'Cause they
Oh, so the question is, if a menstruating woman, found out after Maghrib, after sunset, that their periods had begun. Okay, then what do they do? Okay, if she can ascertain, and this is more technical, thing, but if she ascertains based upon, the dryness of the blood or whatever it is, that this happened earlier. If she could tell it happened earlier, then consider it to be breaking the fast. But if she's not sure, then it's okay. It's not breaking the fast.
I don't know what this word means. If someone misses all of Ramadan because of nifas,
Nifas. So this is now the childbirth. It's a period of the childbirth.
does
Afterwards.
she need to make it up or feed the poor? Which of the two?
Then yes, so she feeds a poor she feeds a poor person for every day, that she missed, and then because it's like the menstruation as well, she should make up the day.
So both, do both.
Yeah.
Okay. And the last question is, does backbiting break your fast?
No, backbiting and things like that doesn't break the fast. It's not a good thing to do, swearing and things like that, because we're supposed to be, fasting from evil deeds too. But it's not going to break your fast. It just lowers the blessing you're going to get out the fast. So and the Prophet ﷺ even said in one hadith that men lam yada qawl az-zur wal amal bihi falaysa lillahi haja an yada ta'ama wa shrab. He said, whoever does not stop scandalizing people and acting on it, then Allah has no need for you to give up your food and drink. Right? If you can't do that, you're a joker, right? You're wasting your time. Okay, so this is what it's saying. But technically speaking, it is a fast without blessings. Like, they're losing the blessings in the fast. Okay? And the other action, and again, there may be a need for us to go over this, but the other action is actions permitted while fasting. Because some people get too stiff when they're fasting. And it is permissible to brush your teeth. And especially the Prophet ﷺ had the miswak. It's a stick plant, and it has a neutral taste. We have a miswak in the Caribbean. There's one that was in Jamaica. I think it's other places too. And it has like a mint type of taste, to it. It has a taste to it, or licorice. So that one you shouldn't use because that's got taste. But the miswak is a neutral taste. Or you could just use your toothbrush, right, without any toothpaste on it, is better. And then you can, brush your teeth, with that constantly and clean your mouth. Technically speaking, in the morning when you get up, if say you rested after Fajr and you're fasting, and you could brush your teeth with toothpaste. Now there's different opinions on this. But the middle road is try to avoid it, but if you use toothpaste, you have to rinse your mouth until the taste of it is gone. You got to rinse your mouth. Okay? But it is permissible to brush your teeth.
What about your own saliva?
So that's one of the ones that's coming up. It's also, swallowing your own saliva. Okay, that's permissible. Some people are so hardline that they're saying you can't swallow anything, even the liquid saliva made in your own body. If you swallow it like you drank it, that's too far. You can swallow that, but some people, they will continue to spit it out. That's going too far. It is permissible for that. You could also take a shower or bathe. I mean, I put that picture, but I wouldn't advise, being in a place like this in Ramadan, right? But technically speaking, if you did end up in a place like this, then you could go into the water, but don't put your head underwater, right? Because the water doesn't go, because you go underwater, it's going to go inside. But especially in hot countries, it is good. Sometimes it's good after the sun is really high, you can take a shower, right? But you just have to watch out for the water around your face so it doesn't go in.
Could you swim in a swimming pool?
Yeah, swimming in a swimming pool also is undesirable unless you're doing the stroke where your head's above water. So you'd have to dog paddle or whatever it is with your head above the water. Once your head's under the water, you're in trouble because the liquid more than likely is going to go in, right? So you need to avoid that. Okay? And of course, eating and drinking at night is permissible. Okay? And but you have to watch out, how much we eat and drink, try to measure, but it is permissible, of course, in the evening. And it's permissible to travel. It's also a good thing if you can go to Mecca and make Umrah, a lesser pilgrimage in Ramadan. You can get great blessings, almost like making a pilgrimage. So it is good to travel, especially for good intentions in Ramadan. So that's permissible. Okay? Another thing is injections. Now, there's certain injections like insulin or certain things which just on the top of the body. Some injections which just, there on the top of the body, the injection. That's okay. The problem is when the injection is intravenous and it's going into your bloodstream, especially giving you nutrients. That's the one that's not permissible. But the person with just to take a shot like that, a virus shot or some kind of thing, that's okay. Okay? Yeah.
Is it frowned upon to nap for excessive amounts while you're fasting?
No, it's okay. Sleeping is okay. We shouldn't be sleeping through salat or anything like that. But sleeping is good, and the Prophet and his companions, they used to take a rest after dhuhr. Between dhuhr and asr, the siesta, Spanish call it qaylula in Arabic. They used to take that. And even scientists recognize that it is good to do what they call a power nap. So even some jobs now have got beds inside the office. So if you can't take it, then let them lay down for an hour. And if you can lay down, take a power nap for an hour, then you're more productive than sitting there drinking the coffee and still yawning. Take a power nap. And especially in Ramadan in the beginning, some people get a burst of energy. But sometimes your body is, you may feel a little bit tired. So so take a rest.
Last year, when I was fasting, I felt like I was so cold throughout. I was freezing. I would put on a sweater, go under 2 blankets. My limbs would just be freezing. Is that a normal thing?
That is not normal. Maybe you need to go to the Bahamas. You need to go south with the birds, man. Did you go to a doctor or anything like that?
No, but my parents, they said, they kind of laughed and they said, you're finally finding out the struggles of fasting. Because I think I did a bit of research. Maybe it has to do with metabolism, like your body's not.
Could be metabolism.
But I just wanted to know what level it's normal.
But I would say it's still better to see a doctor. Yeah, just to be sure. Because sometimes the body can react in different ways, right? So you need to be sure what it actually is. Some people are diabetic and things, and they don't even know that, right? Until they go to a doctor and get a full blood test. Then they realize that there's something happening. It's also permissible to use oil on your body, like perfumes. These are also permitted, as well. But you have to realize, in terms of your breath, that there is a thing called khuluf fema sa'im, and that is bad breath of a person who's fasting. No matter what you do, you will not be able to make your breath to be perfect nicely, because bad breath is coming from your stomach up. Okay, and especially by the time after Asr, so it's better to be, especially in the end of the day, not so social, right? Especially up in the face social. Just take it easy. And some people have a way of, sometimes a little rude, but they have a way of talking to somebody and sort of like stepping back a little bit, or like talking like this. But that can be rude if the person's not a Muslim, right? But you're not going to stop the bad smell from your mouth. And the Prophet ﷺ said, this smell is sweeter to Allah than the sweetest musk, the sweetest perfume. That smell, it's sweet to Allah. It means you're suffering, right? Right. So that's a good thing. So don't think that you're going to defeat, that, and take it easy. Take it easy. Now, in the end, again, this is the point. You're excused if you swallow your own saliva. Okay, and then also, like I say, if vomiting comes up, as long as it's not self-induced vomiting, then you're excused. Okay, if you're outside inhaling dust or smoke from the streets, or if you happen to be in a room or a place and somebody's smoking marijuana and they blow the smoke and you smelled it, it's not going to break your fast. Okay, it is excusable. But you try to avoid it as much as possible. Some people who work in jobs where there's a lot of dust and things, they might ask these questions. It may be even good to cover yourself with a mask. There. Question? Anybody has any more questions?
We have a couple questions.
Yeah, go ahead, online.
There's a person who's quadriplegic who has tried fasting.
Okay, we asked that question. She went and we asked it, yeah. Nothing else? Okay, so the floor is open. Okay, eating and drinking by mistake. We said that. If you eat and drink by mistake, then Allah has given you that drink and given you that food. It happens on the first day or something. The person just by mistake, they just naturally drink the water. Then they say, oh no, it's Ramadan. That was given to you by Allah because you made a mistake, right? But not, to continue drinking. Once you know, you got to stop.
What happens if you intentionally break your fast?
Yeah, so
you say, that's it, I tap out.
Yeah, so this is something that we were going to go on. It's a little bit higher level, but that person has to they have to do kafara. They have to now pay to because that's a major sin that they did, intentionally breaking the fast. Okay, it's not, again, the person's not sick and they can't make it or anything like that. No, new Muslim who just started and they didn't realize that's going to hit them like this. That's okay. But somebody who's in Islam and whatever, they intentionally break their fast, then they have to free a slave, which we don't have slavery here now. Some people say pay bail for a Muslim in jail or something. I don't know. I don't know if that qualifies as the same as slavery, right? But or else you have to feed 60 poor people. You have to fast for 2 months consecutively. So this is no joke, right? Fast for 2 months consecutively, or feed 60 poor people. Okay, because it's serious thing.
So I heard that changes depending on your school of thought.
Yeah.
So I had this one question. Is it sinful to switch between schools of thought based on your nafs, like your desires?
Yeah, I mean, this is a little higher level question for our class. But there are different scholars who have codified, Islamic practices, and they're called schools of thought within the people of the Sunnah. And if a person is just jumping in between one scholar, that they're playing games to try to get the easy way out, then that is not right. However, if your school of thought says something, and another person comes along with a hadith from the Prophet that says you're allowed to do something else, then you can follow the Prophet. Because the scholars never came along to stand in the face or in the way of the Prophet ﷺ. They never came for this. But the wrong thing is that intention of jumping between one and another to get the easy way out. That's not right.
This alternative of feeding the poor, right? Now, like in the case of missed fasts or things like that, is there another way of doing it? Like if you don't have access to 60 poor people to feed them, can you donate to the masjid or something like that?
Yes, so this is a good question, because today, especially here, in the GTA, unless you went to certain sections of Toronto, they're pretty bad. But we have set up, and most of the masjids have set up, you'll see boxes in the front of the mosque. And one of them is saying fidya. It is saying this is specially for people who are breaking their fast. So you can give it to that, and the mosque takes responsibility to take that money and give it. They can't use it to clean the building or no. They have to feed the people with that money. So it's set up for that. So you'll be able to give it there in the masjid, and that will make it easy.
Yeah, and who determines the rate in terms of how much is reasonable for?
Right. So the scholars now determine that. It might be slightly different in masjids. Here, Sheikh Ahmed Kuti, we will see the fidjas. I don't know, have they announced the fidya price? No, so they will announce the actual cost for the fidya. Yeah, but it's around $10 though. Sometimes it changes, slightly. Some people are really literal. So they say it used to be like a saw, like a certain quantity of barley or dates. And if you took that much, how much would it actually cost? So they said, no, I can buy this much barley for $5. But when you look at the situation here, if you're going to feed that person, in those days, that would have fed them. But in these days, what is $5 going to buy you? You can hardly buy Tim Hortons. You can't get a meal for $5. So that's why they balance it out to be somewhere around $10, where at least you can get some decent thing, for a meal for each day.
We have a couple online.
Go ahead.
First question is incense/air freshener break the fast?
Incense? Yeah, just burning incense, the smoke does not break the fast. There at all. Yes. So
64 people need to be Muslim.
Good question. Yeah, in this case, it is Muslim. It is supposed to be Muslim. So we're going to break here for the Salat, and next week we're going to continue on in this. We'll do a slight review and then go on to some other points. But think about questions of Ramadan and your fasting, inshallah. And we'll see you again next week. وآخر دعوانا الحمد لله رب العالمين والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله.